to look at this video much before 3:30 or 4 because it just took me a little while to get to it. But anyway, we're going to work with some vocabulary today. We've been working with order of operations, and now we're really going to get into middle school math. And we do need to get down some vocabulary, and you may know these words, but we need to get to the point where you can use these words. So, and probably the last word you don't know, and we'll spend a little more time on that. So anyway, some vocabulary. The first one is an equation. So what is an equation? An equation is a mathematical sentence that has an equal sign. So whenever you see an equal sign, like this, that means you've got an equation. If there isn't an equal sign, if there's a greater than or less than sign, or there is nothing in between two sides of something, then it's not an equation. If it is an equation, it has an equal sign. Every time you see an equal sign, you have an equation. So here are a couple of examples. So I expect you to write down the word equation, and I also expect you to write down everything that is written down here. So you may have to stop the video. Okay, the next one. Before we get to that, I want to say we solve equations. So when you have an equation, you can actually find out what an answer is. You may be wondering what this little x is here, and we're going to get to that later. That's called a variable. But that's one of the things that we do that's new in middle school math is we work with variables. All right, the second term I want you to know is an expression. An expression is a mathematical phrase, and that has some kind of an operation. So it may have a plus sign, a minus sign, a multiplication sign, a division sign. This is a square root sign. It may be raised to a power. There are all kinds of operations that we could do. There's another one called factorial. So that lots and lots of different operations. Some you know about. There are many that you don't know about. I'm sure there are many that I don't know about. But an expression contains some kind of mathematical operation, but it does not contain an equal sign, and it does not contain an inequality sign. So examples of expressions might be 3 times 4 minus 7. There you go. Doesn't equal anything, just 3 times 4 minus 7. So there's no equals written. Now you can simplify that down to what? Well, that would be using our order of operations. 3 times 4 is 12, and minus 7, okay, is going to be 5, right? So now we do another one might be 5t plus 8 plus 3t. So this has another variable in it, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But because there is no equal sign and there is no inequality sign, we would call this an expression. We simplify expressions. So we simplified this down to 5. We would actually simplify this expression, 5t plus 8 plus 3t. We would simplify that to 8t plus 8. But we'll get to that later. Okay, let's make sure. So now to the next page. Little more vocabulary. The next one is a term. A term could be one of maybe 3 things. It could be a single number, like 3. That's a term. Or a single variable, x. And again, we don't quite know what a variable is, but we'll get to that next. Or it could be numbers or variables multiplied together. So it could be 3x, or it could be xy, something like that. So some examples might be 23, 5a, or a term could actually be 3 times 6, or a times b. Okay, now we get to variable. A variable is a symbol. It's usually a letter that is used to represent an unknown number. Examples might be t or n or x. It's a symbol. So it's like a number, but maybe we don't know what that number is. And so if we don't know what a number is, we'll stick a letter in. So sometimes variables might seem a little scary, but you've actually used variables. Have you ever figured out the area of a rectangle? Well, the area of a rectangle, you have to know the length and you have to know the width, and you multiply the length times the width. So we know that area equals length times width. Well, here are 3 variables right here. So A equals L times W. So we might substitute in a number. If we know that the length is 4 centimeters and we know that the width is 2 centimeters, we might say the length is 4 centimeters times 2 centimeters, so the area would be 8 centimeters squared. But before we know what those numbers are, we will substitute in a letter, and we call that letter a variable. Another example would be that the circumference of a circle is 2 pi r. R stands for radius. We may not know the radius of the circle, and we may not know the circumference. So we'll simply substitute that in before we know the actual number. And then somebody can tell us what the number is. They can say, oh, the radius is 4, and so we would say that the radius is 4, or the circumference then is 4 centimeters times 2 times pi. And we might substitute in 3.14 times pi. Another way we can use a variable is rate equals distance over time. So if you're in a car, so this is my car, maybe it doesn't go so fast. And this is another car that maybe goes really fast. So let's say I'm in a car and my car goes 30 miles in 1 hour. Well, I would take 30 miles, that's the distance represented by the variable d, and I would divide it by 1 hour, and I would say that my rate is 30 miles per hour. So that rate is distance over time. So this is a variable, that's a variable, the d, and the t is the variable. Maybe the race car is going, I don't know, maybe the race car is going 300 miles in 2 hours. So I would substitute in 300 miles for the distance here and 2 hours under time, and I would solve that because this is an equation, and I would say 300 miles divided by 2 hours is 150 miles per hour. So that's how we use variables. They seem a little scary, but you have used them before, and we're going to start using them quite a lot. Okay, hopefully you've taken some good notes. If you haven't, stop it and go back and do it again. Talk to you later. Bye.